My name is Isabeau Sterling, and I know what it feels like to be erased by the people who should have seen me first. When I was 16, my brother was praised as the pride of our family, while I was treated like a phase they hoped would pass. Years later, nothing changed. On the night of his grand celebration, their laughter rose as they mocked me for leaving the army, like my years of service, my sacrifices, and my scars were proof I was nothing but a failure. Their voices cut deeper than any wound I carried from war. And that was the night I realized silence would no longer protect me. The glass beside me was fogged with my breath, a pale canvas for the swirl of snow outside. Flakes drifted in quiet spirals across the small parking lot, settling on the hoods of cars that hadn't moved all day. Inside, the library was hushed, its silence broken only by the rustle of pages and the faint creak of old wooden shelves. My mornings here were always the same, reading picture books to children whose laughter filled the drafty room, sliding returned novels back into place, polishing tables whose varnish had long peeled away. To anyone watching, I must have seemed like nothing more than a woman living quietly in a Colorado town, modest, unremarkable, untroubled. But beneath that veneer, the past never slept. Every night, fragments of the desert still clawed their way back. Faces, radio calls, the heavy silence after an order I could not follow. I had left the army not because I lacked the strength to continue, but because I could not betray my conscience and still recognize myself in the mirror. It was a truth I never shared, a secret I carried like a private wound, invisible but unhealed. The vibration of my phone broke the stillness, once, twice, then again. On the third time, my mother's voice filled the voicemail box. "Don't make this into something. Just show up." They wanted me at the party celebrating my brother's new construction company. I could already hear the laughter, the sideways glances, the subtle reminders of who was considered worthy and who wasn't. I knew what awaited me, another evening where I'd be the punchline. And yet, as I slipped the phone back into my pocket, I made the choice. Not to prove anything, not to win them over, but to test myself, to see if I could sit at that table, in that room full of ghosts and judgments, and not break. The fellowship hall was awash in fluorescent light, every corner strung with blue and white balloons, the scent of buttercream heavy in the air. A massive cake stood at the center of the buffet, its icing proudly declaring Vance Builders in bold block letters. The chatter of familiar voices pressed against me as I pushed open the door, my boots clicking across the old wooden floorboards that groaned beneath each step as though announcing my arrival. I slipped into a chair at the far end of the long table, willing my face into calm neutrality. Around me, glasses clinked, laughter rose, and my brother soaked in every ounce of attention, beaming like the golden boy he had always been. He twirled his wine glass, letting the stem catch the light before tilting his head toward me. "At least you wore the uniform once," he said smoothly, his smile cutting sharp. "Even if you quit." The table erupted, some chuckles forced, others too eager, as if cruelty had become a shared joke. I kept my eyes fixed on the tablecloth, swallowing hard against the lump in my throat. The sound of their laughter was cold metal against bone. In that instant, I wasn't 33 anymore. I was 17 again, the girl dismissed as a phase, while my brother was paraded as the family's legacy. I pressed my teeth into the inside of my cheek, forcing a thin, practiced smile that hid the urge to answer back. Their laughter dimmed around me, fading into a low hum as another sound rose inside my mind, the static crackle of a radio in the desert. I could feel the heat pressing against my skin again, taste the grit of sand in my mouth. We'd breached a mud-walled house outside Ramadi. "Proceed!" The voice barked through my headset, the order pounding against my skull. In the half-light, a young woman clutched her child, her body curved like a shield. The boy's wide eyes locked on mine, terrified but alive with something I couldn't extinguish. Hope. I raised my weapon. My finger never squeezed the trigger. They called it disobedience. I called it humanity. 3 weeks later, I signed papers for voluntary separation, though I knew the truth. I had chosen my soul over my career. The clang of silverware against crystal jolted me back. My brother stood, lifting his glass high, basking in the applause that rolled toward him like a tide. I forced myself upright, and that's when I saw him, leaning against the far wall, arms folded, uniformed in the navy blue of our town's police department. A face I once knew well. His eyes were steady on me, unblinking. My stomach nodded. That look said enough. The past I had buried was not as far away as I wanted to believe. In this hall, under these lights, it was waiting to be dragged back into the open. The party was buzzing with laughter when the door opened, letting in a rush of winter air. A young volunteer stepped inside, balancing a tray of pastries that trembled slightly in her hands. Her white shirt was dusted at the cuffs with flour, her cheeks flushed from the cold, her smile too polite for someone clearly rushing to keep up. She moved down the table, setting the tray in front of my brother's friends. That was when one of them, a local businessman, who'd had too much to drink and even more to prove, let his hand slide down the small of her back. The motion was deliberate, practiced, the kind of violation dressed as a joke. Her smile froze in place. The tray shook in her grip, silver tongs clattering softly against the porcelain. I looked around the table, waiting for someone, anyone, to call it out. Instead, I saw smirks, a few half-hearted chuckles, shoulders lifting as though this were nothing out of the ordinary. My chest tightened. In the back of my mind, I saw other faces, girls in refugee camps wearing that same forced smile, the one you wear when stillness is the only way to survive. My brother broke into booming laughter, raising his glass. "Don't expect my sister to step in," he announced, his voice dripping with mockery. "She gave up on the army faster than she'd give up a beer." The words landed like nails hammered into the floor. A ripple of laughter followed, but I heard it as sharp, metallic, cutting into me. Then the man turned, locking eyes with me, his smirk curling wider. "So tell me, soldier," he drawled, "do you even have it in you to do something?" The stem of my water glass clicked against the table as I set it down. The sound sliced through the laughter, though no one seemed to realize the air had already shifted. I rose, each step toward him measured, the echo of my heels against the wooden floor pulling the room into silence. He was still grinning, his hand lingering dangerously close to the girl's hip, certain of his power and of everyone else's compliance. In one breath, I moved. My hand locked around his wrist, my body pivoting with precision drilled into me years ago. His weight followed, pulled down in a swift arc. His knees buckled, his body thudded against the floor. Gasps ricocheted around the hall. A spoon clattered from someone's plate, the sound unnervingly loud in the stunned quiet. His face flushed crimson as he tried to regain his balance, eyes wide with disbelief. The girl staggered back, clutching the tray to her chest, tears gathering in her eyes, though her gaze burned with something else. Relief. Maybe even recognition. I released him, stepped back, and returned to my chair. My movements were deliberate, calm, as though I had simply pushed in a chair or adjusted a napkin. The silence was heavier than any roar. Dozens of eyes bore into me, some wide with awe, others clouded with fear, many unsure what they had just witnessed. In the space of 10 seconds, I had shifted from the sister they mocked into the only person in the room who had drawn a line and enforced it. And for the first time that night, no one laughed. The room still hummed with unease when the doors creaked open and 2 community officers stepped inside, their uniforms dusted with snow. My brother leapt at the chance to seize the moment, raising his voice so everyone could hear. "My sister brought back things from the war," he said solemnly, like an actor hitting his mark. "You never know when she'll snap." His words slithered into the silence, painting me as a ticking bomb. I didn't move, didn't even blink. My hands rested on the table, palms open, eyes steady on the officers. Years of training kept my voice inside my chest, calm, measured. Let them look. Let them decide. Then the manager rushed forward, whispering urgently. The hall had cameras. Everything had been recorded. One of the officers nodded and disappeared toward the back. That was when a small voice piped up. A little girl tugged on her mother's sleeve at the next table, whispering with the frankness only children have. Her mother stood, cleared her throat, and spoke. My daughter saw it all. She said this woman never shouted, never struck. She just stepped in when no one else did. The child's simple truth unraveled my brother's careful script, leaving his accusations hollow. Around the table, faces shifted, uncertain now, caught between the story they were handed and the evidence of their own eyes. Minutes later, the footage played back on a small monitor. Frame by frame, it showed everything. The businessman's hand sliding where it didn't belong. The young woman's forced smile. My deliberate step forward. The controlled takedown that ended in silence. Not a punch thrown, not a voice raised, only precision. An officer turned to me. Why did you react like that? I kept my answer short, every syllable sharp enough to cut. Because no one else did. The room quieted again. The kind of stillness that makes people listen whether they want to or not. Then my old friend, the one in uniform, finally stepped forward. His voice carried the weight of authority, but also the ring of recognition. She maintained complete control. That was restraint, not rage. She stayed within limits. Those words sealed it. The officers closed their notebooks. I was free to go. Across the room, my brother sat frozen. The smugness drained from his face. The stage he had claimed as his own no longer belonged to him. For the first time that night, he had nothing to say. 2 days later, my phone hadn't stopped buzzing. The vibration on the counter was constant, a low rattle that bled into every corner of my kitchen. By the time I picked it up, the screen was a wall of notifications. Someone had uploaded the video to the town's Facebook group. Within hours, it had spread across the state. The clip was grainy, handheld, but unmistakable. There I was, the deliberate walk, the locked wrist, the smooth pivot, the man collapsing to the floor. 10 seconds on loop, 10 seconds that people suddenly thought gave them the right to define me. The comments poured in like floodwater, crashing from every direction. Finally, a quiet hero. She drew the line no one else would. Then, right beneath it, dangerous, unstable, another vet who can't cope. The contradiction was dizzying. I scrolled until the words blurred. My name dissected by people who had never met me. My life reduced to hashtags and hot takes. Reporters called. Podcasts wanted exclusives. Morning shows dangled flights and makeup teams, promising America needed to hear my side. To them, I wasn't a woman with a job and a quiet routine. I was a segment to fill between weather and sports, a curiosity to boost ratings. I set the phone face down and let it buzz itself silent. The next morning, the library opened as always. I shelved the returns, straightened chairs, and unlocked the story corner. Children spilled in, cheeks pink from the cold, bundled in puffy coats. They giggled when I put on a silly voice for a stubborn penguin in a picture book, their laughter bubbling through the room like something untouchable. Their joy was unedited, uncaptioned, real. By noon, a bouquet waited on my desk. Winter lilies and eucalyptus, stems still wet from the florist's bucket. No sender's name, just a plain white card tucked beneath the ribbon. Thank you for standing up. I held the card, thumb pressing against the ink, and something shifted. The storm outside, the viral clip, the endless opinions, was bigger than anything I could contain. Silence would not erase it. I couldn't control where it went or what people decided it meant. What I could control was this moment, the flowers on my desk, the sound of children's laughter echoing through the library, the choice to keep standing in my own life instead of being swept away by theirs. The phone buzzed again. I let it. The storm wasn't mine to stop. The only choice left was how I would face it. The morning was brittle with cold, frost still feathering the edges of my windows when I stepped onto the porch. The air smelled of pine and wood smoke, the kind of small-town winter that seemed determined to seep into your bones. On the top step lay an envelope, plain and unmarked, its corner damp as if it had been sitting there all night. I bent to pick it up, the paper stiff against my fingers. Inside, on ruled paper torn from a cheap notebook, were words written in a trembling hand. That night was the first time anyone ever stood up for me. Because of you, I applied to the fire academy. I want to protect others the way you protected me. A crescent-shaped stain marked the bottom of the page. Coffee soaked into the fibers, smudging the ink but never erasing it. The imperfection made it feel truer than any polished speech or online comment. I sat at my kitchen table, steam rising from my own mug, and read the letter again and again. Each time it hit me differently, shock, then gratitude, then a weight that wasn't burden but gravity. Finally, I folded the paper carefully, as if it might shatter, and slid it into the drawer beside the leadership coin I had kept since the army. For years, that coin had mocked me as a symbol of a career I had abandoned. Today, it felt like a reminder of something larger than titles. A week later, I found myself at the community training grounds. The air was sharp with the acrid tang of smoke from controlled burns, the clanging of ladders and shouted drills echoing across the field. And there she was, the young woman from the banquet, the one whose forced smile had haunted me. She wore turnout gear too big for her frame, collar stiff and creased, but her eyes were alive, fierce in a way they hadn't been that night. She spotted me on the sideline and broke into a grin that cracked through the cold. "If it weren't for you, I never would have tried," she said breathlessly, a sheen of sweat and soot on her face. I shook my head. "You did it yourself. I just lit the flame you already carried." For a long moment, we stood there, the smoke drifting between us. Then she was called back to the drill line, disappearing into the haze of shouts and fire hose spray. I watched her go, and for the first time in years, my past didn't feel like a scar dragging me backward. It felt like a bridge, a transfer of strength, from my hands into hers. Walking away, I realized something I had never allowed myself to believe. The choices that had once branded me a failure were now the very reasons someone else dared to step forward. What I had thought of as wounds were no longer bleeding. They were fuel, and maybe, for the first time, I could stop carrying them as shame and start seeing them for what they were, proof that even broken things can light the way for someone else. That afternoon, the library was nearly empty. Just the soft hum of the heater and the smell of old paper lingering in the air. I sat at the corner desk by the wide window, my breath fogging the glass as the snow outside drifted down in slow, deliberate spirals. Each flake seemed to move with its own rhythm, blanketing the parked cars until they became rounded mounds of white. The world looked muted, hushed, as though it had been draped in silence. The amber light of late day stretched long across the spines of the books on the shelves, turning their faded covers into something quietly golden. For the first time in what felt like years, that light didn't make me restless. It soothed. It felt like permission to finally breathe without the weight of expectation pressing down. As I watched the snow, her voice came back to me, the little girl at the banquet, tugging her mother's sleeve, whispering with wide-eyed certainty, "She's like a superhero." The words had stunned me then, but now they returned with a gentleness that didn't sting. I let out a breath that fogged the glass again, smiling faintly, shaking my head at the thought. No, I wasn't a superhero. I didn't need to be. I didn't need medals or a podium. I didn't need strangers online calling me a hero or critics calling me unstable. None of that held meaning. What mattered was far simpler, sharper, truer, that when a line was crossed and no one else dared to act, I had. There had been times when silence had shielded me, when holding my tongue was the only armor I had left, but I had learned something harder, something deeper, that courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quietest voice in the room finally saying enough. And sometimes it's the choice to stand, not for recognition, but because the moment demands it. The storm had passed, both the one online and the one inside me. Now there was only the steady fall of snow outside the library window, a rhythm as old as time, each flake vanishing into the white. I closed my eyes and listened to the soft patter against the glass. No echoes of battle, no chorus of judgment, just the quiet I had been searching for all along. And in that stillness, I finally understood. I didn't need anything more. This peace, this clarity, this truth, it was enough.